Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the WM32 Football podcast. Today's episode is featuring a person who, a bit similar to other fans that we've interviewed, has seen quite a lot supporting their football club. Again, especially in recent times, and even with the club going into administration and being all the way down in League One. Delighted to welcome Aydin Osman on to today's podcast episode. Aydin, good to have you on. As a Southampton fan, as we've mentioned, we've seen a lot, and we mentioned their administration in the League One days. But how long has your association with the Saints been?
First off, yeah, it's good to be on, mate. It's been really since I was probably, because I grew up down on the south coast, where we had like 3 different schools. It's probably where I was in like year 5, year 6. So it's probably just before we got into all the financial trouble and into the League One days. But I didn't actually get to go to a game until the League One days, so that's fun.
Yeah. So, you just mentioned there that you didn't quite start supporting Southampton until those financial difficulties, and your first game was in those League One days. Do you have any memories of that particular day? The first game that you went to. What do you remember from that day?
Actually, to be fair, the first game I went to, we romped to a 5-1 victory, so that will always stick out in my mind. I think the first thing I remember is I went with a mate that I went to school with and his dad, because his dad was a massive Southampton fan, but he's a United fan for some reason. Don't ask me why. But I remember it was about 3 minutes in, they had like a free kick about 30 yards out, and the wall was fine. I just remember saying to my mate, it was like, the keeper's like a little bit out of position. He needs to be a bit more central. It was like, oh, what are you, like a top quality goalkeeper coach to like 9 years old? And I was like, nah. Look, if he takes one more step to his right, he'll save it if it goes in the corner. And then next thing I know, they've just bagged the free kick top bins. And that moment will always stick out at me, because I was like, you see, I was right.
Yeah, no, excellent. And do you have any idea of who you were playing that day? What the score was and all of those kind of things, or is it a bit of a blur?
It was Warsaw 5-1. I think I've still got the ticket somewhere in my room. Yeah, it was under Pardney as well, and I remember we went 1-0 down it, and then I think Ricky Lambert got 2, Barnard got 2, and I can't remember who else scored.
Oh, blimey! Just jogged my memory there. Lee Barnard. I remember him coming through at Tottenham, and there was a lot of hype around him at the time. But I think there was quite a few strikers ahead of him. I think Keenan Defoe spring to mind that were ahead of him, and I think even Mido. And then towards probably the end of his time at Tottenham, Berbatov as well. But you mentioned there when you went to that particular game, you went with a friend and their dad. Do you still go to games with them? Do you go on your own nowadays? Who do you sort of go to watch the Saints with now?
It's sort of a mix, really. Sometimes I will go on my own, or like, because I know quite a few friends that are Saints, and I will meet them at the game, or I will. I'm quite lucky in the sense that one of my close mates back home is a Southampton fan as well, so I'll go with him when he goes to games, or I'll just literally meet people at the games and go by myself. It doesn't really bother me.
Oh no, that's all right. That's all right. We've had a couple of fans on, and it's sometimes it can be a bit of a family affair, or speaking to other fans, they a bit similar to yourself, either go with friends or go on their own, which I think is obviously it's each to their own and whatnot. When you do go to Southampton and Iden, do you have any sort of match day rituals or superstitions? Is it a lucky top that you have to wear? Is it a bite to eat in a pub before a game, or a few beers, or talk to me about match day rituals and superstitions that you have.
The only sort of ritual I have that I do for every game is I buy a program and like keep my ticket as a bit of memorabilia. I always make sure that I'm wearing the colours, whether it's like a scarf or I've got a top on. But yeah, it's just bog standard stuff really. We'll go to the pub before and have a couple of pints, and then head into the ground. Probably have one more in the ground, then go find the seats and all that.
Yeah, no, I like that. I like the fact you get a program as well as like a bit of a memento. But I'm sure football fans that do get programs, because I don't think there is that many nowadays, because I think club information is readily available on social media. But certainly a certain generation of fans would get a program, and they probably have hundreds, if not thousands, stacked at home somewhere in a garage or in a loft. And I think I know I can certainly resonate with that in terms of getting a program and keeping your ticket if you get them. If not, it's I know some clubs now with technology do e-tickets and things like that, but I always think that there's just a little something about getting a paper ticket. Like you said, it's a bit of memorabilia, and you can pin it up on a wall and things like that, and almost look back and go, and it jogs memories for me. I don't know about you.
Yeah, it's exactly the same. But like, obviously, we've been going through this lockdown. I spent the last few days like sorting them out and just reading through them, and just sort of thinking, oh yeah, I remember that, and then looking at the squads and how they're different, and like I remember the feelings going into that game and all that sort of stuff when I reread the programs and everything.
Yeah, perfect. As a Saints fan, what would you say has been the best game that you've been to or that you've witnessed? Is it Derby Day victories, or is it a particular game that sticks out, that just sticks out for you?
You see, the main one that would stick out would be the Derby Day victory earlier this season when we went to Fratton and won 4-0. But I do have a couple more as well. So there's 4 games that I'll probably always remember, like most of the 90 minutes. And one of them will be the League Cup final where we lost to United. Obviously the 4-0. The 1-0 winner at Anfield when Long put us through to the final, and you're going to hate me for this one, but that 2-1 win at Spurs, the back end of Koeman's season, where we finished the top 6.
Yeah. I know what you mean with that particular game. I think, if memory serves me right, it was the year that Tottenham finished 3rd in the Premier League. Am I right in thinking that one?
Yeah, when Leicester won the league, yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, I remember that one because it was a gutting sort of performance. Because I think we were all sort of, as Tottenham fans, like expecting us to bounce back from. 'Cause I think it wasn't long after the Chelsea game, or it was in and around that particular time, and I remember sort of lots of fans, expectation of bouncing back and trying to do something, and you've come and turned us over. And I know from a personal experience with yourself that you still think about that cup final game and the fact that Gabbiadini was onside.
Honestly, I've never been more fuming at a decision. I remember seeing it live, and I was like, "He's onside, surely." Obviously, we don't have replays in the stadium. I think it got to half time. A mate texted me, and we were 2-1 down. He just had a text through saying Gabbiadini was onside, and then that's it. You watch the highlight back, and you're thinking, how has he missed that? Or why? The biggest thing about that is, why did no one go over to the liner and go, well, Gabby wasn't offside, it was dirty. But like nothing. There was no sort of the test from the players. The players just sort of went, oh well, we'll get on with it. And I think if maybe one of them had gone over to the liner or over to the ref and gone, actually it was Bertrand that was off, but Gabbiadini was on, maybe the decision would have got overturned and maybe the cup would have come out in a different way. I think moments like that define a cup final.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And myself as being a Tottenham fan, I know about certain moments defining finals. Obviously, Sissoko's moment in the Champions League final last season is one that still gets to me 100%. But from best to worst, I may have a feeling on this one. But if there is a particular game that has stuck out from from a not so good perspective, what would it be and why?
I think if it's in terms of being a supporter, it'd be that 9-0. That was just, I don't think I've ever seen a more gutless performance from a football club in my entire life. And the players, to be honest, I had a few friends that were there that would disappear at half time, and like I really don't blame them. I think it was 5-0. It's ridiculous. And I know we went down to 10 men, and then it went into the 3-4. But these players are Premier League players. They've not been getting turned over like that. Thankfully, I wasn't at the game, but I watched all the 90 minutes on Sky for some god unknown reason, and then just never again.
No, and obviously, even if you weren't at the game, fair play to you for watching and sticking with it for the full 90 minutes, because I can imagine that would have been a very, very painful experience for you, to just endure something like that, and obviously seeing your team just almost capitulate in certain moments of games. It's never nice. It's never nice. I think any football fan can relate and resonate with that. Who I may have a feeling as you being a Southampton fan, who this will be, because I think there's only going to be one answer to this, but we'll roll with it anyway. Favourite player of all time and why?
I think it's typical to everyone to say Letizia because of literally how good he was. I think if he was probably at a big club, he'd be as good or as on level with Christophe Zidane. Like his touch, his finish, everything was just good. He had that aura around him where if you give him the ball, he will go and create something. I was a bit unlucky in the sense that I didn't get a chance to see Letizia play, but when you go back and watch the highlights of what he did, it was just sort of wow. But personally, one player that always stood out for me was Fonte, because he was part of that club, the club rise from the dark days in League One. We signed him in like January this season where we just got taken over, and he was there for the Johnson Paint Trophy win, and then he was there for the back-to-back promotions, and then the Premier League, and then all the way up to the Europa League. And it was just sort of he was sort of the backbone in that back four for about a good 7 or 8 years, and he was that leader on the pitch that ever since he was sold, we're missing big time, because we just don't seem to have a player of that quality at the back and someone that can just sort of bring the squad together.
Yeah, no, it's a great answer actually, Jose Fonte, because I think, like you mentioned there about Letizia, and I know you guys call him Le God, and whatnot. How close were players such as Adam Lallana, Schneiderlin, and players like that? How close were they in your thinking?
Nowhere near. Literally nowhere near. Letizia had the world at his feet, and I think it was like we all love him for his loyalty, but if he had the mindset of a modern day player, I don't see any reason why he could not have played for one of the Galacticos.
Interesting. No, I just wanted to probe a little bit on that, because obviously, Lallana, Schneiderlin and whatnot, they came through, and the rise within the League One days, through the Championship and into the Premier League, as well. So now I was just intrigued just to see if they were in your thinking or not. But moving on to the current Southampton squad, who would you say is your favourite player currently, and why?
This one's a bit hard because I'm not a fan of many of the squad. I'd probably say either Nathan Redmond or Danny Ings. Ings, because he is a local boy, he's come back to the club and he loves playing for it. And Redmond, he's just got a bit of quality about him, and he's working. Like, he got slated a lot in his first season and his second season, but then I think you've seen a lot of the hard work that he's done off the pitch is starting to come about now. I think he's kind of got like the mindset that a lot of modern players don't have, where he will literally go and work hard. In that summer where Hughes had come in and we just stayed up, he didn't really have much of a summer. He spent most of it working and training and improving to get better. And I think that sort of off the field stuff is why I really like Redmond.
Yeah, no, I quite like I quite like both of the players that you've mentioned, and I've said a few times actually that I wouldn't have minded both of them at Tottenham, especially Redmond when he was at Birmingham, and even when he was at Norwich before he went to you guys. I've always said that I'd quite like him at Tottenham, and And when Danny Ings, just before he went to Liverpool, I was sort of saying that he'd fit quite well in at Tottenham as well. But no, it's interesting that you said that you don't particularly like the current squad. I was thinking to myself, it's not that bad, is it? Considering, you know, sort of where you've been and some of the players that you've had to now. I was thinking the squad isn't that bad, surely.
See, for me, I personally think it's probably one of the worst squads that we've had in the Premier League since we've come back up. I think if you'd have compared it to the squad that first came up, it kind of lacks a little bit of character. It's sort of, I don't know, like you look at those players and you think, when you look at the players that we've had, especially in like recent years, I just don't think they compare.
Interesting. I quite like that. Different. I don't know if there's one moment for you that's probably been the most memorable in your time being a Southampton fan. What do you think it would be?
I'm gonna have to say the cup final and Gabbiadini being offside. I think that moment will always stick in with me till the day I die, because we were that close to a bit of silverware, and just have like a decision like that potentially influence how massive the result could have been. Just heartbreaking.
Yeah, and you know, I've seen on your social media accounts and whatnot how much that still affects you on a pretty much on a daily basis. How memorable was though the Europa League journey, being a Southampton fan?
We did have some highs, but I think mainly it was a bit of like the high when we beat Inter Milan. I think that was just phenomenal. You know, I think especially as we were a goal down, we came back to beat them, and you know, we just thought really we could kick on and, you know, potentially get a bit further in the competition. And then you look at it as a whole, we didn't score a single goal away from home. The last game was at St Mary's, and we literally just had to win or get. I think because of, I don't know how it really worked, but we would have gone through with a 0-0 draw, or we had to win. And it will always stick with me because we played for a 0-0 draw, and then we go 1-0 down, and it's just sort of, and then we equalise, and then Nikita hits the post in the last minute, and it's just sort of one of those where I look back at it and I think it was sort of an opportunity missed. I think maybe if we'd have got through that, the season would have turned out a little bit different. Maybe the fans wouldn't have turned on Puel as early, because we'd have had a lot more games and we'd have seen a lot more rotation, and maybe the systems would have been a little bit different in the league or the Europa League or the Cup. It's a bit sort of disappointing to see how close we were to kicking on, and we can sort of let it slip out of our hands.
Yeah, no, and I think obviously especially when Koeman was there and the base of the team that you had, and obviously, like you said, getting into Europe, I think, you know, there's quite a buzz and an excitement about Southampton at the time, because you had quite a young squad and a young team, and it's like, right, well, this European campaign could be the start of something for you guys. And you know, as you mentioned there, it didn't quite work out the way it has, and it almost seems as if Southampton have either stalled a little bit or just gone backwards slightly, from that. But hopefully you're gonna pull back round with Ralph at the helm. But from highs to lows, what has been the lowest point, almost rock bottom, supporting Southampton so far for you?
I think the lowest has got to be at 9-0. I've never seen a more horrendous, gutless, pathetic performance in my entire life. Just like I can't even put into words how bad it was. I mean, fair play to Leicester because they were unbelievable, but there is no way, even at any level in professional football, you could be expecting to lose a game by that amount. It was just horrible, and I think that was the point where it sort of clicked in my mind, and maybe a few of the supporters. Maybe it isn't the managerial recruitment. Maybe it's some of the squad that are pretty bad compared to what we've had.
Yeah, no, I think I think most people in football would have probably accepted that was probably as low as it was going to get for you guys at Southampton. And actually, credit to Ralph and his coaching team to pick the players up after that. But then not only that, the run that you've been on since has been quite a thing, really, and quite phenomenal, considering it was earlier on in the season, and this feels like a really long time ago now that you did get really torn apart in your own backyard. And then, like I say, with the upturn in form, it was to do that is quite a thing, I think. And I think it's probably one of the things that's been underrated probably about the season so far, is that turnaround and that shift from from being rock bottom to then everybody rallying round and like I say, pushing on and going on quite a decent run. So we've looked at high points, low points, everything else. But if you could say one person who you would probably say has been the best manager in your time supporting the Saints, who would it be?
I think, well, it's a tough one between two, but for me, it'd have to be Ronald Koeman. I think for the way that he came in, because he came in the year that Poch went to you, and then the first sort of year we sort of really sold our big players. So Lambert had left, Lallana had left, Lovren had gone, Schneiderlin wanted out. He came into sort of really depleted squad. He picked up some talent from the league that he came with in the Eredivisie, with Pella and Tadic, and then brought in Mane as well, and Toby on loan. And then he brought sort of the squad back together, and then to finish 7th in his first season after it'd been torn apart in the summer was phenomenal. And then obviously we lose Schneiderlin in the summer, and obviously something happens with Atleti where we don't get Toby despite a pre-arranged deal where he ends up signing for Tottenham. And then we bring in Van Dijk, and we basically break into the top 6, and that is sort of how good he was as a manager and how good he was with the squad. I think it was a bit of a shame that we couldn't really get him to stay, but when you look at the amount that we were offering him to stay, compared to what Everton were offering him, and they were offering double what we were going to do, I don't think he could really turn it down.
Yeah, I think anybody in any walk of life, if you're being offered double what you're being offered at your current employers, I think you'd be fairly stupid really to turn it down. And I think actually the football that Southampton played under Koeman at that time was really, really good. Like you say, you had to deal with, it's the top players at Southampton being sold and everything else, and I think what he did with that team was quite fantastic, and almost continued, and even you could argue built on the work that Pochettino had done at Southampton previously, really. I don't know about you. I don't know how you feel about that.
Yeah, it's probably about right. Pochettino, there was only a slight difference. I mean, you could tell the aspects of when we had Poch, it was a really full intensity, high press, like for the full 90. Whereas under Koeman, we sort of picked and chose our moments to high press, but the manner in which we played football, where it was on the floor, and we'd like go up to the big man in Lambert or Pella and feed off him with the players close around him. See, then you'd have Rodriguez and Lallana into Tadic and Mane, or Stephen Davis, who occasionally played on the right. It was all sort of very similar. I think the only sort of difference between the Poch side and the Koeman side is the fact that Koeman's side, they probably weren't as high pressing intensity all the time, but they had a bit more bite about them. They were a bit more tougher in midfield. They took it, it took a bit more to sort of for the Koeman side to fall apart than it would for the Poch side.
No, perfect. Love that. Love that analysis as well. And almost trying to work out and sort out the differences almost between the two. And I think you did that really, really well there. So, from best manager then to the worst that you saw or that you've seen in your time at Southampton, who would that be?
Oh, the worst for me has got to be Pellegrino. I think it was one of those where he was brought in to play. This is the exact statement from Les Reed when he was brought in, was to play high intensity attacking football, because that was sort of a bit of a groan on the Puels, that the football was a bit boring, and sort of didn't have that sort of excitement factor that we'd had seen for probably the last 7 years. And sort of towards the end, I think he didn't really know what he was doing. He should have been sacked a lot sooner than what he was. He's sort of living on borrowed time, really, and it was kind of a bit of a fluke in the fact that we sort of stayed up, because when you look at the sort of squad we had at that point, the players weren't sort of that bad. I mean, we still had Van Dijk for the first half of the season, and we just sort of, I don't know, the players just didn't look motivated for him, and it was just sort of, they didn't look like they had an idea of how they were told to play. It was just sort of go out and play. And Pellegrino was more sort of like a mood player. He would pick players sort of based on their mood, which is why he dropped Gabbiadini to start with. Even though he scored quite a few goals at the early start of that season. It's just weird. I just remember going into games, and it was sort of, we wouldn't really do anything. We'd just sort of turn up for 90 minutes and just sort of think like, did we really have any moments that stood out? And it'd be like, no, not really. And I think that was probably sort of the lowest managerial appointment that I've seen so far.
Yeah, I think I'd seen a lot of. Well, I watched quite a bit of Southampton that year, and you did sort of feel a little bit uninspired by watching Southampton. And I think there was a long period. I think it was like 1 win in 17 or something ridiculous like that, and it didn't seem like there was much in terms of a change in strategy or tactics to try and stop the rot and to try and get yourselves out of it. So no, I'd probably say that Pellegrino's time at Southampton wasn't the greatest. That is for sure. And you've been to quite a few games and quite a few grounds in your time. What would you say has been your favourite one apart from St Mary's?
If I'm completely honest, the favourite ground I've been to actually isn't from a Southampton game. It was while I was out in Holland. I went to Holland versus Northern Ireland at the final stadium, and that stadium was beautiful. And because it's obviously such like an old historic stadium, I think there was just something about it that I kind of sort of loved, and the atmosphere was just incredible.
Oh, brilliant. Love that. Something completely slightly different. Obviously an international game. What then were your memories of that particular game, as you're walking into the ground or walking up to the ground and everything else?
I remember thinking, wow, because obviously it's like a game at night, and obviously as well as I do that night games can have that something a bit different that you don't get like a Saturday at 3:00 or even at like a Sunday kickoff. It's sort of, the atmosphere was intense. We spent probably quite a few hours in sort of like a local bar, which had like a mix of Northern Irish and sort of Holland fans, and both sets of supporters were great. And I remember what, like, the atmosphere was fantastic, like from both sets of supporters. I remember, I think Northern Ireland went 1-0 up, and then they bottled it. But they played really well for probably about the first 75 minutes. They created quite a few chances where they probably could have been 2 or 3 up. And obviously, Holland, with the quality they've got, you can't sort of let them have the chances they did. But it was sort of like, it was a really good experience to be around, especially as a neutral, because you kind of got to see different systems and different football. And yeah, it was really, really good just to be involved in something like that.
Yeah, no, perfect. And it sounds like a wonderful and really sort of eye-opening experience, obviously, to see a game on foreign shores, and whatnot. But from your most favourite then to your least favourite ground that you've been to, again excluding St Mary's.
So this one's going to be a bit tough. 'Cause I do like quite a few of the away grounds. If I'm probably honest, the worst I would say that I've been to as a Southampton fan would probably be Goodison Park. I think a bit sort of like the seats are wooden, you don't really get a great view. It's a bit of a dive. And to be fair, I think both times it was there, the results weren't great. I remember, especially the first time was when we were fighting under Hughes, and for some reason, John Moss was about 40 yards behind the play, decides to blow it for a foul on Redmond, on the goalkeeper, which one wasn't a foul. And then Pickford probably takes it another 10 yards further ahead. And then Bertrand fails to clear, and it deflects, and we concede in the last minute. And that put a lot of pressure on us to go into Swansea. It was sort of gut wrenching at the time. But yeah, I just don't have good memories of Goodison Park. I think if I'm honest, I probably wouldn't go back until they get a new stadium.
That's quite an interesting one because I've had a couple of fans on, and they've actually said that Goodison is probably one of their favourite grounds that they've been to, for the fact that it's quite an old traditional ground, and whatnot. I do agree with you though about the view, because I was there last season, just before Christmas, when Tottenham actually won away from home, which seems a rarity these days. And yeah, I mean, from my personal point of view, I quite like the traditional ground and where it sits within sort of the city. But yeah, no, I agree with you about the view, because you are on the side, and I was fairly low down as well. So when you're looking at obviously the pitch is on a bit of a slope-ish, if you like, to deal with obviously drainage and things like that. But if the play was over the other side, it was difficult. It was difficult to see. And then actually towards the left of where I was, there was like a net between like the away end and then the stand to your left at Goodison. But no, it was interesting that you mentioned Goodison, because like I say, there's been other people that have quite enjoyed the ground and the atmosphere as an away day. But again, it probably might have been something to do with the result as to why it's your least favourite ground.
Yeah, definitely. The results there haven't been great. Like I can understand why people enjoy it. I'm usually a big fan of sort of older grounds, but I think sort of the memory of like if it's we're gonna go to Goodison, well, we're not gonna get anything, so I won't bother. It's sort of very sort of meh. And like you're right, the view isn't great, especially if you've been to Goodison. The view itself is, you described it perfectly, where it's a bit on the slant, or if you're a little bit higher, and obviously you've got a bit of a restricted view. If you're obviously where there's a home supporters are above you as well, it's just a bit meh.
Yeah, but no, I think again sometimes it does depend on the results that you've had, when you've been to certain grounds and whatnot. And I do agree that it can be a bit of a nightmare to get to, as well. But then I think Anfield is pretty similar in the respect that it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare to get to as well, because I don't think, well, there's not really much in the way of, there's not like a train station nearby or anything like that. So I think both grounds in the city of Liverpool aren't the easiest to get to for away fans especially. Aydin, just a final one from me. What are your hopes for next season? Being a Southampton fan, what are you looking for?
If I'm looking for next season, first off, I'd probably want to get Ralph tied down onto a bit of a longer deal, because his contract will expire at the end of next season. I'd like to see probably a bit more of like a squad overhaul. I'd probably like to see some of the Deadwood go, some of the players out on loan go, so it can be reinvested into the first team squad, because realistically, that is the only way that we are investing in our squad at the minute is from player profits. So it'd be nice to probably get rid of some of the deadwood, some of the players that haven't performed, and just think, right, we can get some new fresh players in, get a new sort of younger team that can sort of click throughout pre-season to go forward. And probably I'd like to push for a top 10 finish if we can get if we can get rid of some of the deadwood, get Ralph tied down to a new deal, and then probably get him the players that he wants in to perform in his system of like the high press attacking and, you know, sort of the back to sort of like the real bite, but more sort of counter attacking high press. Put your opponents on the press and take the game to them. I think top 10 probably wouldn't be out of the question.
No, perfect. Aydin, unfortunately, that is it for us. We are out of time. Guys, we are available actually on Spotify. So feel free to give us a follow on there, WM32Football. This will also be on YouTube as well. So give us a like, comment, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Again, that is WM32Football. All that leaves me to do is to once again thank Aydin for his time and sharing his views on Southampton. Aydin, thank you very, very, very much. And I hope you enjoyed it.
Yeah, it was great, mate. It was it was really nice to be on. If you ever need me back, you know where I am.
Perfect. I'm sure we'll be in touch soon. All right. Thank you. Cheers.
No worries, mate. Thank you.